Glad to know you are there. Let's continue. In my last video, I made us to understand that God was the only one that was able to come down in the land of Egypt to deliver the Jewish nation from the bondage they have found themselves in. And when he wanted to give them the law, he simply told them that you should not forget that you were once slaves. And you were helpless slaves, and I came down and delivered you. When no other power can do that. And I carried you on the wings like that of eagle. Therefore, don't forget that. I am about to release the constitution that will guide you. I know that many of you will obey it at inception, but I know you will still forget as you move forward. But never forget that you were once slaves. Now, let's look at that very statement deeper. When God said, I'm the one who brought you out of Egypt, he knows that what he did for them is enough reason for them to be loyal to him, for them to obey God. If we look at African countries, we discover that African continent was once enslaved by the colonial masters. It is a historical fact. But look at the ugly development. When we started agitating for freedom all over Africa, starting from Ghana, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, and all other countries of Africa, we kept agitating for freedom from colonial leadership or masterhood. We succeeded in getting that. But look at the ugly development. When we become free, we had laws that were handed to us with which we will govern ourselves. Those laws are meant for good. But do you know what? We have neglected those laws. And that is why Africa continent is a battleground. We are doing our best to turn our nations into a lawless nation, without counting the deadly consequences of that. That was why God said, listen to me. You were all once slaves, but I freed you. Be very careful to obey these laws so that you will be able to prosper. I want to challenge African leaders today. No matter the position you occupy, respect, honor the law of the land. In keeping them, progress, achievement will be our normal experience. But in violating them, doom will be our inevitable portion. May God deliver Africa from negligence of their law, negligence of their constitution, trampling down on the constitution that are meant to guide them so that they will do well. May the Lord deliver us from such spirit and help us to know that it pays to obey the law. We were once slaves in the hand of the white men, but today we have claimed to be free. Can I remind us this? Every freedom that is not checkmated will end the free into doom. Every unguarded exercise of freedom will definitely devour he who exercises that freedom. Freedom is checkmated. That is why God is coming up with this law for the Jewish nation. And he said, I delivered you from the house of bondage. Even our African leaders, listen, and listen very well. Do you know that before, most of all these African leaders occupy the position of leadership, they were once in one bondage or the other, especially financial bondage. But when they climb to the office, to that ladder of leadership, they will start grabbing money here and there, forgotten where they started. The worst of it is one being in the bondage or under the bondage of selfishness, under the bondage of self-oriented actions, under the bondage of exercise of power without control, under the bondage of weaponizing hunger. These things are bondage one can find himself in. If you are not under the control of such negative tendency, you will be acting otherwise. But I pray that God will open our eyes to see the essence of remembering where we started. God, having said this, decided to release the content of the Constitution. The content of the Constitution will come in my next video. Will they be able to obey that Constitution? Will they be able to allow the Constitution to help them live to please He who delivered them from the bondage? Because He who is giving them this law is the one that delivered them. And in keeping to this law, that particular God who delivered them will be happy with them. And that is why we keep talking about angry God, angry God. Angry God is a nomenclature that is coined from God not being happy because human beings are violating the laws He handed over to them, in both in Africa as well as the body of Christ, which serves as my focal point in what I'm saying. Permit me to say that my next video will introduce us to the content of the Constitution, or the body of law that was handed over to the Jewish nation. And we will look into the content and see why God gave them those laws. Call me Pastor Elisha, the rising voice in Africa and the reformer with a difference. Thank you for watching.